Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. So we are starting a new series on the Old Testament today and how to read the Bible, all those important things. We're going to continue to learn what is going on. Turn this off. All right. So learning the books of the Bible, right? I know that we know the songs. We're going to go over them. Now it's going to be online so that way you can practice at home. Okay. So before we get into that, you need a Bible, okay? So I want you to go and find a Bible, not the app, all right? I need you to find a physical Bible. So if you don't have a physical Bible, ask your mom and dad for a physical Bible and go right now. Go find it. Do you need help? Okay. So take out your earbuds or turn up the TV, unplug it so that way your mom and dad can hear me. Mom, Dad, I need a Bible. No, not the app, a real one. Okay, so hopefully that helped. You can put back your earbuds, you can turn down the TV. Alrighty, so while you get yourself situated, get that Bible, I want to remind you about our BGMC challenge. So we're gonna watch a video all about that. Give me just a minute here. Just a minute here. Hang on. Wait a minute. Okay, so let me share my screen. Where's it at? Here it is. Okay, remember our BGMC challenge ends on September 13th, so here we go.
Kids are awesome. Throughout its 7 decades of existence, BGMC has seen kids across the nation stand and support missionaries in good times and bad. We've challenged kids and they've answered. From the very first offering of $9 to the $162 million since. The time has come again for us to stand and support our missionaries, and it's gonna be epic. We call it Epic Give Day. 1 month for every BGMC kid to raise $100. 1 day, September 13th, to give what you've raised. $1 million to meet critical needs around the world. 2020 has been one weird year, and our missionaries at home and around the world are facing emergencies not only in their own lives, but in the ministries that they've given their lives to. Hear what some of our missionaries are saying.
200 million migrants were put out of the cities and sent back to their villages. Within hours of the statement, the government shut down all trains. You have millions of migrant workers who are walking back to their village, which sometimes is 1,000 miles away. And you've got children dying on the way, on the road, no food, no water, and this is probably one of the saddest moments we've ever experienced. Now, the government has shut down the red light districts. That is in a way, a great blessing, except the women have nowhere to go. No money and no food. And suddenly there's an opportunity to reach these women in a way that we've been trying to reach them for 20 years.
Here's the plan. First, grab an Epic Give Day pledge poster. Then, spend all of August doing chores, baking cookies, selling some toys, raising money. Each time, marking how much you've made on your poster and putting that money into your Buddy Barrel. Finally, on September 13th, bring your barrel to church along with everyone else. Or, if your church isn't meeting in person yet, you can give your pledge online. You will be joining thousands of kids across the nation to meet critical needs around the world. Join us. Make a difference, because this is gonna be epic.
All right, so make sure you are keeping up with that Epic Give Day. It is on September 13th. So the plan is to actually send the money out on September 13th. So if you can get the money to church before then, that would be wonderful. So we have our BGMC bucket out in the front foyer. And we also, today actually, I set up some of the BGMC boxes. So if you don't have a Buddy Barrel, or even if you're not a kid and you want to join, you can take up one of those boxes so that way you can put your money. Remember, it is $100 per family or per child, whatever is easier for you. So it's a challenge challenge for everybody. It's called a challenge because it might not be easy for everybody. And if you can just imagine the impact that it's going to make right now, everybody is in some kind of need. And that is the time for God's people to shine, right? So let's work together to meet this need, to see what God can do with this money going to the missionaries at this time, this crazy year. And I can't wait to see what God can do. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our lesson. So first I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the #1 selling book of all time? Like best book ever. Always sells really well. Even now, it's probably one of the top selling books. It's the Bible. Yes, the Bible. So it is not only the #1 seller of all time, it's actually the reason that books were invented. The very first modern book ever was printed and sold was the Bible, right? So the Bible is the Word of God. We know that, right? And so it's one book made up of 2 parts, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and it has 66 smaller books between those 2 parts, right? So put together these 66 books across the 2 testaments, they tell us the amazing story about how God made us, how we fell away from him, and God's plan to save us, right? So for the next few weeks, not including BGMC Sunday, this is a 4-week series. So the next 4 weeks, we're going to be learning about one of the testaments of the Bible, and that is the Old Testament. So that's the first one. The Old Testament has 39 different books, and the Old Testament, it tells us a story of how we got here, so creation, and why we live in such a messed up world, and how God put a plan in motion to save us from the mess that we created. So the Old Testament, it starts with the creation story with Adam and Eve in the book of Genesis, right? So after God made the world, the Garden of Eden, and the first people who are Adam and Eve, those people sinned by disobeying God. Now, I want you to understand, don't be ragging on the girls, because it wasn't just Eve's fault, okay? Adam ate the fruit too. He was standing right next to her. So Adam and Eve sinned and disobeyed God. And God gave them only one command. There was one rule in this paradise, and it was, do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So when Adam and Eve broke God's command, they were separated from God, never to walk with him in the garden again. So a little parentheses here. If you don't know this story, I actually just talked about creation and Adam and Eve falling away from God in the Critter series. So if you go back, it's the simplest way, easy for you to understand. So if you want to know the whole thing about how God created the heavens and the earth and everything that we see in us and what happened that we're not in paradise anymore, you can go back to those videos and you can see that there. Alrighty. So Adam and Eve could no longer stand in the presence of our perfect God. And no child or grandchild or great-grandchild of Adam and Eve could stand face to face with him either. But God had a plan that would reunite him with his children and make everything all right again. So before that we get into our Bible story, I want to talk a little bit about how the Bible works and how to find verses. When you see somebody say, oh, John chapter 2, verse 12, so that way you know how to find it, what all that means, okay? So let me just share my screen here, just a second. All right, so here here's some Bible basics. So again, we know that there are 66 books in the Bible total. So these are smaller books, right? And they're broken up into 2 parts, the Old Testament and the New Testament. And so in the Old Testament, there are 39 books. And in the New Testament, there are 27 books. And we'll get into the names and how they're ordered in just a minute. But first, I want to show you how to find things in the Bible, or what the labels mean. It's like an address. Think of it like that. So this is an address for a verse. And this is Genesis 1:1. So this word here, Genesis, whatever the word is, that's the name of the book. Some of them are really hard to say. Some of them are easier. So Genesis, that's the name of the book. And then this first number is the chapter number. So the first number is the chapter number. So just like, I don't know if you've ever seen, if some of you are younger, but if you've ever seen a chapter book, they're numbered. So you're in chapter 1 and chapter 2 and chapter 3. So each individual book has chapters, right? So that is the chapter number. And the next number after the colon, the 2 little dots, is the verse number. So I'll show you in a minute just what that means. So the first word is the name of the book. The first number is the chapter number. And the second number after the colon is the verse number. Okay. So now I'm going to show you a little example of a Bible passage. Okay. So this Bible passage, the address for this Bible passage, it appears as John chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. So when you see a little hyphen or a little dash between the numbers, that means that all the passage, what they want you to read is the first verse to the 5th verse. So that's what it means, from this number to this number, right? So give me just a minute here. All right, so I want to bring your attention to this right here. The word became flesh. Now that is actually not part of the Bible. It is a heading or a title that we have given this section of the Bible. So in every Bible, it's not always the same. So that will tell you what you're about to read about. It's kind of like to let you know what you're about to read about, but it's not the same in every Bible. So I just want you to know that. Okay. So how we find this is John. So we've opened our Bible to the book of John, and that's actually in the New Testament. It's one of the Gospels. It's the first 4. It's one of the first 4 books. It's actually the 4th book. Okay. So this is in John chapter 1. See the big number here that tells you the chapter. So the big number is chapter 1. And then how we find the verse, well, this starts in the first verse, but these little numbers here, if you see here, this 2, this 3, this 4, and this 5, those are the verse numbers. And so it's not in order of sentences, it's kind of just phrases. Let me see if I can find an example here. Okay, so actually all of these end with a period, because sometimes verses stop in the middle of a sentence. So sometimes there's not even a period between, it's not even a full sentence. So it's just different ways. I don't know who numbered them or how they're numbered, but this is how you find the address, right? So this is the chapter and these are the verses. So if we were looking for John chapter 1, verse 3, then you would open your Bible to the New Testament, you would find John, then you would find the first chapter, and then you would find the little number 3, and this is the verse. So the verse says, through him all things were made, without him nothing was made that has been made. So that is 1 John chapter 1, verse 3, right? So that's how we find it. Another thing that I want, we're not going to use them too much. I'm not going to ask you to look for it too much while you're in Kids Life, but it's a good way to study if you want to know a little more about a verse. I want to bring your attention to this tiny little A. It can be a letter. Sometimes it's a letter and a number, but what this is a footnote. And so what it means is that this, whatever word it's next to, it means that there's a little note that maybe you should know if you want to know more, if it doesn't make sense to you. Sometimes it's used obviously in the Bible, they didn't use dollars and pounds and the way that we measure things now. And so a lot of the times we need like a translation. So for instance, when we talk about Goliath, I forget what kind of measurement they use for him, but it is not feet. And that's what we're used to, right? And so it's almost like we have to translate from whatever the original language was. There's a translation, right? And so what this is, this word overcome, it can be or understood. So that's what the footnote is. So there'll be a little letter or letter and a number, and at the very bottom of that page in your Bible, there'll be a section called footnotes, and it'll tell you, you just match them A to A, and it's talking about this verse here, and it says or understood. So that's just a little extra. We probably won't use that. All right. So now we're just going to go over the Old Testament books. Okay. So here are all the books in the Old Testament. Now, how is it that we know the order? You just have to memorize it. I know, because as you can see, it is not an alphabetical order. It's not an order of which book is the longest or the shortest, even the longest or the shortest title. It's just not an order. So actually we found some songs that can help us remember the order of the Bible books, but I cannot play it for you while we're live because it'll shut down the live stream because it is copyrighted. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sing it for you later. And I will also include the link in the description of this video. So when this video stops streaming, when we stop being live, you'll see the link in the description and you can follow it there. I also have a playlist on the Kids Life channel with both songs for the Old Testament and the New Testament, but I'm not going to sing it right now, but I just want you to look here at the book. So it's quite a bit. Remember, it's 39. And so we just got to memorize it. That's the only way to learn the order. And actually, we'll maybe talk about this next week. Inside of the two separations of the Old Testament and the New Testament, there's also sections. For instance, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, that is called the Torah, the Pentateuch. And so that is a lot about the law. That's what the Jewish people still hold to be like the basis of our faith and how everything came to be, who God is. So those first 5 are called the Pentateuch. So that's just, there's little mini names for each section of the Bible, and it kind of helps you learn how to read it, because even the Bible isn't even in chronological order, which means that a lot of times the Bible isn't in order of how things happened. So the first part, the second part, the third part, it's not always like that. Sometimes it's a little bit mixed up, or sometimes there's some parts about poetry, or sometimes there's some parts about the future. And so we got to learn how to read it. It's not like a normal book that there's a beginning, middle, and end. So it's helpful if you know how to read it, because sometimes it can be very overwhelming, but God is not a God of chaos, and there is some order, but you got to learn the order, right? Okay. So now let's get into our story. So we are going to read from Genesis, the first book, chapter 12, verses 1 through 7. So now I want you to practice. I hope you have your book to find. It should be at the beginning. It is the first book in the Bible. So you're going to look for Genesis, the first book in the Bible, and then chapter 12. Remember, the big number tells you the chapters, and of course they go in order. So it starts at big number 1 for chapter 1. It goes all the way through 12. So find the big number 12. And we're going to start at the first verse in 12. So as long as you see the big 12, the first few words, that is the first verse. And we're going to go all the way to verse 7. So remember, the little numbers tell you the verse numbers. So until we get to the little number, verse 7, that's where we are going to stop. All right. So hopefully you found it. Maybe you need, and it helps to practice. We got to keep practicing so that way we can be quick to find our scriptures. All right, so let's go ahead and read. So it says, Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 7, it says, oh, wait, before we read, I need to explain something to you. So this is about Abram, who later becomes Abraham. So I don't know if you've ever heard the song, Father Abraham had many sons. All right, so he's a very important guy in the Bible. But I want you to know that these pictures, I don't know why the illustrator made him this way, but during this time, before he was Abraham, he was Abram, he was 75 years old. And so in these pictures, he looks pretty young. I don't know if they had hair dye in Bible times and Abram's time, but I just want you to keep in your mind, even though he looks young, he is 75, okay? All right. So it says, chapter 12, verse 1, the Lord had said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife, in Spanish we say Sarai, I don't know how to say it in English, but so he took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran. So here's a little map. So he went from Ur to Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. And they arrived there. Verse 6, Abram traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Moreh at Shechem. So here's from Haran all the way to Shechem. You see that on the map there. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. Last verse, verse 7, the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring, I will give you this land. So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. All right. So we know that this is Father Abraham. So we're not talking about the stars yet. I know that the famous story about him is the stars. And of course, when he has Isaac. And so we're not there yet. All right. So this is just the first part when God calls him to go. And that's all he says, just to go. So we don't know much about Abram's life before we met him in Genesis 12. We know that he lived in the land of Ur, and we know that he was married and that he was very close to his nephew Lot. And we know that he was rich, and we know that he was very old when God called him to pack up and leave everything behind to go live in a new place. And so this is the part that is very important about Genesis chapter 12. This is what we need to internalize, what we need to learn about Abram. So when God called, he went. He didn't argue. He didn't make excuses. He wasn't like, God, I have a really great job. Like, I just don't know if I can transfer over there. Like, it wasn't anything like that. He didn't make any excuses. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask for a sign. He just packed up all his things. He gathered his wife and his servants, and he went to where God called him. And so God didn't even give him the full plan. He just said, Abram, I need you to go. And he went. So Abram obviously must have really trusted God. And he was faithful to do whatever God asked him to do. So it was Abram's faithful heart, and that made him the perfect place for God to start his plan to save us. So God would use Abram, who was long past the age of having children. This is when we get into the next story. Long past the age of having children, to father a mighty nation. He would have a son named Isaac. And then Isaac would have two sons named Esau and Jacob. And then Jacob would have 12 sons that would soon become the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. And through that nation is where God gave the 10 Commandments and later sent his son Jesus to die for us. So all the way from Abram, and I need you to understand this is thousands of years, all the way from Abram to Jesus, there God had a plan, and God ordained everything, right? And God has a plan for all of us, a plan to save us from sin and a plan for us to do great things for him. So like Abram, we may not know where he's leading us, but we can trust God and follow his lead, right? So I want you to understand, or it's interesting rather, that God didn't have to make a plan to save the world from sin. God could have started all over, just thrown it away, crumpled it up, and started over. But instead of starting over with Adam and Eve, instead of the opportunity to start over with Noah, instead of saving Noah and his family in the great flood, he could have wiped everybody out, but he didn't. God loved us way too much to do that. God loved you and me even then. Thousands and thousands and thousands of years before we were born, God was thinking about his plan for your life, for my life. He wanted as many of us as possible to find our way to heaven. That is God's will, that we would be with him. We're the ones that get in the way of that, right? And that's why God made this plan. That's why God called Abram. And that's why we can trust him with our lives now, today. And we can follow him wherever he leads, even if we don't know where we're going, even if we don't know how we could possibly accomplish this, even if we don't think we have the skill, or we don't think we have the knowledge, we don't think we're liked enough, we don't think we're popular enough. God has a plan. And he always uses the most unexpected people to do the most unexpected things. So even as a kid, like I tell you, you're not just a kid. God has a plan and a purpose for you even right now. So the Old Testament, it teaches us that God loves us. It teaches us God's laws and how God expects us to live, how to live a holy life before God. And it shows us how and why we became separated from God through our sin. And it shows us how God used good and faithful people to set a plan into motion to save us from our sin. So I want you to think, I know that the situation is a little bit different right now. Life isn't the same as we're used to. We may not interact. I know that the main goal of a Christian is to tell everyone about Jesus. And right now it's kind of hard for you to do that because of, or at least I won't say that it's hard. It's different because the way we're used to doing it, can't really do it. I know a lot of you probably aren't going to school in person. A lot of you probably only see your families. And I know most of you, your families are already saved, but those of you who have family members that aren't saved, there's your opportunity right there. Okay. So I want you to think, is God calling you to do something for him today? Is he calling you to trust him? Have you been worried? Have you been stressed about what's coming next? God is asking you to trust him. Is he asking you to trust him with your heart? Maybe you're watching this, maybe you've grown up in church your whole life, or maybe this is the first time you're ever hearing about Jesus and you've never even been to Kids Life at Living Water. I believe that God is asking you to trust him with your heart. That means giving your life to him, trusting him, making him the God, the Lord of your life. So Abram, the story of Abram and how he just goes. God says and he goes. God says jump and he jumps because he trusts him so much. That's the kind of relationship that Abram had. And we need to have that kind of relationship with God. So Abram, with his relationship with God, it shows us that we can trust him. I mean, Abram picked up his whole family. Like, it wasn't just him and his wife. It wasn't just him. I mean, he had a bunch of, remember, he was really rich. So he had almost like his own little town, little city that lived with him. And when God said move, he said, all right, everybody, let's go. God says move. And that's exactly what he did. He trusted God that much that it wasn't just him. It was him and his entire household that was asked to move. For what reason? He didn't know yet. But he trusted God. He has a plan for us. And I promise you that God will never, ever, ever lead you astray. Ever. In Hebrews, it says, God says, never will I leave you. Never will I forsake you. And you can trust God's word. You can trust that because God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is truth. He cannot lie. And so when he says what he says, he is going to bring it to completion. When he has a plan for your life, it's because he's given you the tools and he's set you up to accomplish whatever it is for his glory. You don't have to worry because you can trust God. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our memory verse. Let me share my screen here. Give me just a second. All right, so our memory verse, it says, it's found in Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 22. Okay, so Jeremiah is in the Old Testament. He is in the section, he's in the Old Testament, and these books, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Hosea, let me think of some more. I can't think of any on the top of my head. They are the prophets. And so if you've been in Kids Life, if you've never been in Kids Life before, a prophet is basically a telephone for God, right? And so in the Old Testament, God would oftentimes call people to be prophets, and he would tell the prophets what he wanted his people to know. So God would tell them, and then they would tell God's people. So if you wanted to know what God was speaking to you, you would go to a prophet, and they would tell you what God was saying for the nation of Israel, for his people, right? So this says, so you will be my people, and I will be your God. This is the whole verse. Nice, sweet, and simple, right? I know that you have a lot of work to do with your remote school. So you have about 5 weeks, I think, to learn this verse. Easy peasy, right? So Jeremiah 30:22, it says, so you will be my people and I will be your God. So obviously this is for God's people, and it's just a declaration. You will be mine and I will be yours. And that's a promise from God. It's this relationship that he has promised us. So you will be my people and I will be your God. That is your memory verse. All right. So I know that I promised you a song. Okay. So some of you already know it. So the Old Testament song, and we're just going to read them. I'm going to leave this up so that way you can follow along with me. And it goes like this. You ready? Okay. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. That's all the 1st and 2nds. Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Psalm, and Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and their songs of Solomon, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joe, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. That's all the books. All right, so that is the Old Testament, and there's a different song for the New Testament. So I want you to know in the song, for some reason, this book right here is pronounced Haggai, but in the recording of the song, they say Haggai. So instead of, let me see, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah. So instead of saying Haggai, we're going to say Haggai because that's not even phonetically correct. So it's Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. Now, as you can see, I know some of these names are kind of hard, especially if this is the first time that you're learning about reading the Bible, about the books of the Bible. So I want you to go ahead and listen to those songs, start memorizing, so that way it'll be easier for you to find the books of the Bible. All righty, guys. So that is all I have for you today. I am so glad we got to spend this time together, and I love you, and I can't wait to see you guys. Have a blessed week. I know remote learning is hard. It's so hard. I wish that everything could just go back to normal, but God is still good, right? And he is still sovereign, and there is a plan. All right. So don't forget about BGMC Epic Gift Day. Let me see what else. I think that's it. All right. Listen to the Bible book songs. We'll see you next week. Bye.